This month we have a treat. I'm going to be talking about every single Death Battle cast as well as the Fan Battle casts. This month we finally got some Kickstarter matchups to talk about, but I'll get to my feelings on those later. Without further ado, let's begin. Number 5, Sora versus LeBron James. With a matchup like this, there really aren't many connections that matter. They are both, characters who have crossed over with other worlds. Sora goes to a bunch of Disney worlds and LeBron experiences many different Warner Brothers worlds and Space Jam / multiverses. Both were forced to experience other worlds without a choice. They are side by side with the most iconic Disney / Looney Tunes characters throughout their stories, and they would both technically form groups to take out the main villains of each of their respective stories. Look, as fun as this is, it just isn't something I'm too interested in, especially after hearing their debate. In this debate, Liam represented LeBron and John Mitchell repped Sora. This came down to one factor for me, and it's Sora's adaptability and the power of waking. Sora's magic can adapt to other worlds, and John made a good point about Sora being able to adapt without Donald, which shut down people's arguments of Sora not being able to do this on his own. If he couldn't, he'd be at a massive disadvantage against LeBron in the Toon world. LeBron in Space Jam is a Toon, so he can do things like stretch his limbs and become pretty much unkillable. Liam brought up him scaling to the Looney Tunes characters, but honestly, I don't think he can fully scale. Liam said in this cast that the characters in Looney Tunes go to a school to fully utilize their Toon powers, and LeBron hasn't attended this school nor learned much about being a Toon. So this experience is very simple for him. Sure, being a Toon, he could get erased and still survive, but like John said, Sora's magic can kill the unkillable, like the pirates in Pirate Town. His magic has a way of negating immortality, which is even expounded when using the power of waking, where I believe he would be able to completely destroy LeBron. Further expounding on LeBron's scaling, he's in Fortnite, but everyone loses their abilities and memories before entering the game, so it doesn't really count. And then we have multiversus scaling, which is kinda weird because we aren't sure what versions of these characters we are directly seeing. And I'm not sure if you'd want to treat that game as canon. Sora has just a huge advantage in this fight, even if Sam kinda contested a lot of what John was trying to say, even though his protest did not make any sense sometimes. John did his research and I think he won this debate. It's important to note that LeBron James, even in multiverses, has no real combat experience. All he does are basketball tricks. I mean, I'm sure the real-life guy can fight, but Sora is used to fighting creatures capable of wiping out worlds and universes. LeBron doesn't have that kind of experience. Not to mention Sora's magic being a main factor here. Fire, water, lightning, wind, gravity, time, all of these things Sora can do which LeBron has no counter for. This is not a matchup I enjoy, and I really hope we don't get real-life people on this show anytime soon. Number 4, Ice Bear versus Tigress. Connections. I'm not sure. Even after looking at both of their stories, they seem really different. The best I could come up with is that they both have lived in isolation until someone came out of nowhere to save them from this life, showing them acceptance and love. From this person, Tigress learned martial arts and ki, while Ice Bear learned math, how to wield an axe, and German. There could be more connections I'm missing, I'm not sure. But let's get to their, debate? They don't talk too much about Tigress in this podcast, since it was more a deep dive into We Bare Bears, but they do talk about how she's one of the best martial artists in that universe and she can fly. That's about it. For Ice Bear, they bring up how he is also a master martial artist and can fly using his Roomba. He's fast enough to dodge lasers, is smart enough to turn a Roomba into a death machine or create wormholes with math. He can throw axes like boomerangs, and his best advantage, bears beat tigers for the most part. They don't really talk about it much, but who do I think wins? In terms of base stats, Tigress should take power and they are about even in speed. That is until Ice Bear drinks some coffee, which would give him quite a speed advantage over Tigress. Ice Bear may be generally smarter, but Tigress is a smarter fighter when it comes to combat. She is a weapons master who can harness ki to sense people from far away, propel someone forward, and generally boost her power and durability. She's an impressive fighter, but how does Ice Bear stack up? Sure, he can fight and he can wield an axe well, but I think she is just too skilled for him. His main argument would be his Roomba. It can levitate and let Ice Bear fly, can electrocute foes, and has a trusty axe, not to mention it's pretty fast, almost being comparable to Ice Bear without his coffee. Plus, it's controlled by an AI, meaning all Ice Bear needs to do is clap and it will act on its own. With that being said though, Tigress wins this. I just can't see a way that Ice Bear could get past her martial arts mastery and her power. It's a lot more fun than I thought at first, but I'm sure they both have better matchups. 3. Knuckles vs. Piccolo. Their connections are simple. They were both rivals to Sonic and Goku for a time, before later becoming allies that would go through thick and thin for their previous enemy. They were both part of races long believed to be extinct, making them the only ones of their species for a while in their stories. And they both had their race destroyed by an alien. Chaos for Knuckles and Frieza for Piccolo. That's really it for connections. Not really deep, sure, but it's fine. They didn't debate this matchup. They just didn't. They cover things like how powerful Piccolo is, how Piccolo can regenerate, his key attacks, and his intelligence. That's really it. For Game Knuckles, Ben said that he's fast, strong, can knock Sonic out of his super form, and that he chuckles. Most of the cast was dedicated to Ben making a bit about Archie Knuckles, even though that wasn't the character he was representing. There's no debate between Archie Knuckles and Piccolo. I don't think anyone wants that fight. Liam didn't argue back with Ben for most of his points because he wasn't debating Archie Knuckles in the first place. For a podcast, I think this was still entertaining because their personalities play off each other really well. But for a debate, this is a nothing burger. Who I think wins? Piccolo, without a doubt. There was some debate before Dragon Ball Super Heroes, but now he's apparently on par with Goku, and that's just the level of power that Knuckles can't fight back against. I wouldn't give Knuckles his super forms either. If you think it wasn't standard for Eggman to have the emeralds, it definitely isn't standard for Knuckles to have them. On every conceivable level, Knuckles just gets stomped. But admittedly, it could still be a fun episode if they approached it properly. 2. Palpatine vs. Makuta. These two are manipulative masterminds that used any person they could to achieve power and their overall goals. They both overthrew their masters to become the leaders of the evil factions. They both are essentially obsessed with being on the dark side. They both created servants using biological experimentation and machinery to create beings who eventually betrayed them. They both can transfer their bodies to different hosts to avoid death, and they both succeeded in becoming the rulers of their universes. For connections, I think this one's pretty stacked. Whoever thought of this matchup just knew what they were talking about. But let's move on to the more interesting parts. The debate itself. With this cast, they started doing a deep dive into the more obscure series instead of bringing up the matchup. I'll talk about my feelings on that later. All they really said for Palpatine is that he shoots lightning and can potentially transfer his soul to other bodies. That's not a lot. For Makuta Pterodax, they had Liam try to learn as much as he could about the series in a short time span, so most of their discussions didn't really cover the debate at all. What they did mention though is that Makuta had electric powers, has a soul that can possess other robots, can create a bionicle virus, and can control a giant robot like this Great Spirit robot. I'm not sure who exactly wins this fight, although they did bring up the fact that Makuta could just take over the Death Star and fire a laser at Palpatine, something he definitely couldn't survive. But I'm not sure of the likelihood of that happening. They didn't cover things like how the Force works or that Palpatine could have a sort of future sight to help him fight, or even if Makuta could be cut by a lightsaber. I don't know. All I know is that this is a matchup with so much potential for a discussion, and we didn't get any of it here. I love the idea though. And number 1, Gamera vs. Fatalis. They are both created by a society that they ended up destroying. Both are highly intelligent, but yet they are both polar opposites. Fatalis despising and destroying humanity, and Gamera loving and protecting them. This is very lukewarm for connections, but as a foil matchup, it's pretty good, although I'd love to know the debate on this. This had a similar problem as the last cast topic, where this was another deep dive, but this time into Monster Hunter. I'll keep this short since they suffer the same issues. All they say for Gamera is that he's way bigger, he can fly through space, absorb fire and energy to power up his attacks, and has a strong chest laser. Fatalis could possibly cause an eclipse, which would be an incredible show of power. Can produce Dragon Blight, which would null anyone's elemental abilities and shut off regeneration. If Gamera absorbs his Dragon Blight, it would just hurt him more, and Fatalis can even kill you from the inside if eaten. Once again, I can't really make a call on who wins based on such little information. My gut says Gamera because he's so much bigger, and I'm pretty sure his laser isn't seen as an elemental attack, meaning Fatalis can't nullify it. But Fatalis having things like Dragon Blight would make it very hard for Gamera to make a recovery. It's a fun idea, I just wish I knew more. This next section is just something that's added for the fun of it. Which matchup should they go with if they bring Goku back to Death Battle? I ranked all of the ideas they listed, so let's get into it. Number 22, Krillin with a rock. This one is just a joke and no one was going to take it seriously. Number 21, Light Yagami. They argue in the cast that Goku isn't his real name and Goku isn't human, so Light wouldn't be able to kill him. If you do believe this, Goku slaughters a teenage boy who doesn't fight. If you don't believe this, Light writes down the name of an idiot and kills him immediately. It's not that entertaining. 20, Shaggy. I get that to a certain point Shaggy could scale to Scooby, but no. Number 19, Pikachu. This ain't it, Chief. Pikachu is strong, sure, but even if Pikachu could stand up to Goku, nobody would want this matchup. 18, Dr. Manhattan. Goku could just be immediately disintegrated by Dr. Manhattan. I don't even know if Goku could be able to touch him. Number 17, Giorno Giovanna. Gold Experience Requiem is annoying and I'd hate to see it reappear on Death Battle. 16, Optimus Prime. I'm not sure how Optimus would scale to Goku, but I've seen Optimus vs. Superman and I like that idea way more than this. I have a gap in my Transformers knowledge though, so this one could move. Number 15, Ryu. At least with this matchup, they are both martial artists that harness ki, but Ryu gets stomped and compositing the character isn't very fun to me. Number 14, Gojo. Goku is just too fast for Gojo. If Gojo can't react to Goku's attacks, then Gojo's ability wouldn't activate and Goku would just beat him really easily. But Goku could get trapped in Infinite Void or even disintegrated with Hollow Purple, so at least Gojo has ways to win. It's just not very likely at all. 13, Alucard. Alucard may have crazy vampire abilities, but Goku can shake entire universes before he even hits his full power. 12, Ben 10. This is another matchup where it's just wait for Alien X. None of Ben's other aliens even come close in any aspect. Number 11, GT Goku. I'm not a fan of same series matchups on Death Battle, with a few exceptions. If people want to see this fight, look up a channel called Hyorin Jutsu. He animated this fight and I think it'll satiate everyone who wants this on Death Battle. 10, SpongeBob. Nobody wants to see Goku come back to get bodied by a sea sponge. Number 9, Kirby. I do still believe that Kirby can beat anyone with normal Dragon Ball Z scaling, but after how strong Goku gets in Super, I doubt this is a fair fight. Number 8, Game Sonic. Game Sonic is a lot stronger than people think, but Goku still bodies him, at least this version of Sonic. I will say that this is the first one on this list I wouldn't mind seeing, so we are heading in a good direction. Number 7, Jin Mori. Jin Mori does share some thematic similarities with Goku, and it would be awesome to see them fight, but it would come down to Jin's godly ability since Goku outstats the shit out of Jin. I don't think it would make a difference though. Goku still has this handedly. Number 6, Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong would be a classic original versus inspiration matchup, and Sun Wukong probably stands the best chance against Goku on this list. I'd have to look into this to know for sure though. But Wukong probably takes the strength advantage while Goku probably takes the speed advantage. It's a fun idea even though some people aren't the biggest fans of Death Battle using mythology. Number 5, Gon. I really like Gon versus Kid Goku. It lets Gon and Goku's more positive nature really shine, while also showing the very clear differences in their more serious sides. They both have a rock, paper, scissors technique, both use ki-like abilities to shoot blast or hit things really hard, and both eat fish. I really like this idea and I hope they do it someday. Number 4, Sailor Moon. This is prime shoujo versus shonen right here. Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball pretty much introduced anime to a wider American audience. For the debate though, Goku lost before Super happened, but now he wins, I think. Now, I'm more of a fan of Madoka vs. Sailor Moon, but I wouldn't be upset if they made this episode instead. Number 3, Pegasus Seiya. Whereas Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon were what introduced anime to America, Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, and Saint Seiya were, and still are widely loved in Mexico. Les gusta mucho estos programas allá abajo. As someone who cares a lot about Spanish-speaking cultures, especially Mexican culture, I think this matchup would be very fun. Just make sure you have a Spanish dub ready to go for this episode because I feel like it could be a big hit. 2, Saitama. This would be a fun fight. No doubt. I don't think Saitama can keep up with Goku's stats, but Saitama has been continuously getting stronger, so given some time, this debate could just get really insane. And number 1, Archie Sonic. My most wanted on this list is Archie Sonic versus Xeno Goku. They can both alter time and reality in ways their original counterparts just couldn't do. Where I think Heroes Goku is stronger than Xeno, Xeno and Archie Sonic have a way better debate and could have an insanely fun back and forth. I like that they added this matchup to their podcast, and I hope they do more Decide the Matchup type casts in the future. I think it's a really fun idea. Now on top of everything, I just want to talk about the Fan Battle cast, just because I want to shout them out and I think they desperately need more subs. Starting with number 6, Nightmare Sans versus Lord X. They are both based on video game characters, both come from fan fiction, and both exist beyond their own reality, potentially affecting or having knowledge of our own reality. Wagonworks repped Lord X, which I didn't know wasn't the same as Sonic.exe. Doesn't that mean their title is wrong? Whatever. Saul repped Era Sans, and they both did really well. I'm gonna start with their arguments for Lord X. Lord X doesn't have a soul, but he can control and steal souls. Since Lord X doesn't have a soul, he can just regrow his body from nothing and even have a body made of antimatter. He can mess with programming, create his own world within a dimensional void, and affect potentially our world and get closer to our reality itself. He can morph his body, can remake other people's forms and abilities, has a black hole in his mouth, create illusions, control the elements, give life to objects, and could potentially threaten every single universe in existence. He has a lot. Era Sans has quite a few feats as well though. Era Sans can freely move around universes, has a universe of his own called the Anti-Void, which is funny. No one else can access this dimension, not even Core Frisk, who is a being that is essentially unkillable and all-knowing. But Era Sans might be the only person that could put Core Frisk down for good. He can use strings to make a puppet of people's souls, can see through other people's eyes, is essentially immortal, has a glitched hell system so it doesn't move like normal, has the most determination of anyone, can regenerate souls, alter his timeline, can heal himself, can take his soul back if it's stolen, can resist his own timeline being erased, can destroy every cosmology in the multiverse, and can erase someone's being with the Gaster Blaster. There was a lot of arguments based around souls, with a lot of Erasan's abilities being useless since Lord X doesn't have a soul, but at the same time Lord X wouldn't be able to manipulate Erasan's soul either. The question is, who would put the other one down reliably first? And to answer that, I'm going to address one of the arguments that they thought was important to this debate, and that is the argument of who exists on the higher dimensional plane. So they both argue that Lord X and Erasans can affect our worlds, but that Lord X exists on a higher plane because he can affect our worlds directly. I actually disagree here, and let me explain why. When Erasans breaks the fourth wall, he directly addresses us, the readers. Everything in our world exists as it is, but he just exists alongside us. Lord X was able to pull a meteor out of the sky and kill the programmer that created the virtual world that Lord X resides in. This would make Lord X have a higher plane of existence, but it falls apart for one reason. That meteor never fell into our world, meaning that the world Lord X affected is still a fictional world closely based on our own reality. And Lord X thinks that that's the highest reality, while Erasans can see our reality and knows that it is our reality. Both of those human worlds just aren't the same, leading me to believe that Erasans exists on a higher plane of existence. So I think Erasans wins. Erasans can drag Lord X to his dimension, which Lord X wouldn't be able to manipulate. Erase Lord X with the Gaster Blaster, and even if he did die, he could just reset time and try again. Lord X would just lose to a potential bug in this game. Hey, did anyone know that Lord X was Sonic.exe's father? Moving on, Shang Tsung versus Raphael at number 5. They are both scheming, egotistical villains who try to overthrow their main villains to acquire great power. Both can shapeshift. Both help the main heroes in dire crises. They both use everyone to accomplish their goals and achieve godlike power. And both get absorbed by the very people they attempted to betray. There's also so much more here, but their connections are so deep that we'd be here all day. Let's get into their debate. Noah Green, the host of Fan Battle, reps Raphael, and Santi Sherm, the creator of Fan Battle Cast, reps Shang Tsung. They both did an excellent job here, but I do have minor pet peeves. I really don't think they need to show quotes or text when making their points about certain things. There's multiple times in this debate where they'll pull up a full page of text or show a screenshot of the game where the only thing that matters were the small subtitles on the bottom of the screen. Maybe if you highlighted the important bits or just cut the text from your image, it would be better, but typically you would want to use screenshots to visualize a feat, or if it uses text, use it as an example to try and debunk something that is highly contested. Minor note aside though, damn, they really went in depth with this matchup. It's crazy how much more detail they go in than the normal Death Battle casts. They cover how they can both throw fire, they can both shapeshift, although their shapeshifting is different. Shang Tsung can turn into other characters and gain their abilities as long as he absorbed a small part of another person's soul, and Raphael can morph his body itself to look like an even bigger monster. They can both manipulate souls, can both revive themselves in different ways. Raphael will resurrect back in hell if he's killed outside of it, and Shang Tsung can revive himself in a way with the sands of time. The debate here is actually very interesting, and even though I felt Sherm was at a natural disadvantage, he held his ground pretty well. Raphael can only be harmed by things on a conceptual level, while here is Shang Tsung harming conceptual beings. Raphael can shake the abyss, which is said to contain infinite universes. Here's Shao Kahn conquering an infinite amount of universes. Raphael can create portals to different dimensions. Shang Tsung can negate dimensional travel. He has so many counters for Raphael that I'm sure he's done his homework. Unfortunately though, I don't think Shang Tsung can stand a chance to the Crown of Carcass. This crown can do many things on top of make Raphael incredibly powerful, like resist magic, regeneration, and counter existence erasure. Sure, Shang Tsung knows almost every form of martial arts, but once Raphael negates his magic, it's game over. The main question is this: could Shang Tsung do something about the crown before Raphael destroys the Sands of Time, which would kill Shang Tsung? I think the answer is no. I'm pretty sure the crown can't get destroyed or removed, meaning that it's game over for Shang Tsung. Sorry Santi, you tried your hardest. Number 4. Q versus the Toy Maker. This has been called the live-action Bill versus Discord for a reason. This matchup is so crazy. They are both beings from a higher dimension of reality. They constantly outsmart the most intelligent beings in their universes with their superior skills to alter and control reality. Both were characters that were merely referenced before making an official appearance. They are both cocky, unpredictable assholes who don't believe in concepts like good or evil. They both see humans as a race of beings that will end up destroying themselves, while also having some amount of respect for humanity as well. And they both would rather use intellectual games to defeat their opponents other than use their actual powers. Both of them lost in a game of wits to the protagonist of their stories and ended up being banished to another world. I can honestly go on with the connections, but this is just such a fun matchup that I'm glad exists, even though I personally haven't seen anything these characters have come from. Well, I've seen Doctor Who, but none of the episodes that the Toy Maker appears in. Those details are what the debate is for, though. In this debate, Saul reps Q and Violet reps the Toy Maker. This was a little hard to follow since this was their first cast debate, but I'm gonna try and understand this matchup as best best I can. So right off the bat, I'll say that they determined that these two are about equal stats and both can create and destroy universes. I mean, just look at the things these two can do. Q can erase someone from existence, teleport, shapeshift, control gravity, phase through objects, can read your mind, create realities, manipulate energy, and seal people away. These are all things that Sol brings up, and these are all things the Toymaker can do as well. The Toymaker can also create pocket dimensions, mind control, play around with supernovas, transmute objects, was able to liquefy something as powerful as the TARDIS and absorb it, manipulate dreams, manipulate the time vortex which is said to be 5-dimensional, beat the Master and the Doctor fairly, the two smartest beings in his universe. And in my notes I wrote that he was killed by the Doctor but survived, which I'm pretty sure is a line from Ice Age, but it's funny nonetheless. If I were to wager which character had better control of reality, I think it would be the Toymaker, but honestly that's just a small part of this debate. The real question is who would win in the Toymaker's game. This battle comes down to intelligence. So part of the reason this is such a hard call is because they are both omniscient. They can both know anything and everything at all times. So who would come out as the winner? Q constantly underestimates his opponents, but the Toymaker is far more arrogant. Sol brought up that Q can use omniscience to cheat in the Toymaker's games, but the Toymaker would realize that he's being, well, toyed with and retaliate by cheating himself. This is so close, but I think the Toymaker probably has this. His reality warping appears to be a bit better, and generally I think he probably would be a bit smarter. But Q has a better chance of keeping his head while the Toymaker would probably lose his cool. I still think I gotta say the Toymaker, but this is an episode with such amazing potential that I'd love to see. Number 3, Crash vs. Donkey Kong. The connections for these two is that they are both animalistic video game characters who were the original mascots for the companies that made them before being overthrown by other characters. They both defend their island from opposing forces, protecting family members along the way. They are both not the smartest characters, but have plenty of creative and destructive weapons and vehicles to make up for that fact. I used to really want this matchup, and then this debate happened and I lost a lot of interest. Mario Master 157 reps DK and Paul repped Crash. The problem I have with this debate is that it takes so much to try and justify a Crash win here. We don't actually hear that much about Donkey Kong. Mario Master at the end even says that he doesn't know if these characters are each other's best matchups, just that they wanted Death Battle to re-explore these characters for later episodes. But let me slow it down for a second. Let's talk about their debate. They bring up a lot of their arsenals. They talk about Crash having the motorcycle, Jeep, and Polar, which really wouldn't do anything here. Although Polar being in the fight would be funny as hell. But the other things Crash has in his arsenal are pretty well countered by DK. Crash has a fruit bazooka, but DK has a coconut gun, which can fire in spurts so you know if it hits Crash, it's gonna hurt. Crash has the jetpack and the space motorcycle to let him fly, but DK has the air barrels and flying bongos that match that. Crash has Aku that can take damage and make him invincible, but DK has the crystal stars and Strong Kong, which also make DK invincible. Crash has the power loader and the Mecha Bandicoot, but DK also has a giant mech to contend with that. It seems pretty even in terms of equipment. But let's get into the differences they discuss. Crash has other masks to help him out in this fight, like the Kapanawa mask, which can stop and travel through time as well as see the future, the Ika Ika, which controls Crash's gravity, and Lani Loli, who can potentially turn Crash invisible, even though Crash can turn invisible with another power-up outside of this. The biggest thing that Paul brings up is the Anotherator, which can create clones of Crash. If all of these different clones use all of Crash's weaponry all at once, it would be hard for DK to win. That's if he didn't have things like grenades, power stars, and the Gold Flower, which Mario Master says could kill Crash instantly. I do still like this fight outside of a debate sense, but it just seems like DK has all answers against Crash's best arsenal while Crash has nothing. It feels just a bit one-sided for me. I think they both did a decent job of debating, even though Mario Master's microphone was crackling the whole time. But nonetheless, I think DK wins. Number 2, Krillin vs. Bandana D. They are both very underestimated characters who are part of the main crew. Both are the strongest of their races and both stand side by side with the main protagonist against universal shattering threats. There's like no connections, but this is still really fun. This debate was all power scaling, baby. This is the stuff I usually actively avoid in my predictions. A giant portion of this debate is Sherm, who is repping Krillin, trying to justify why he thinks Krillin should be scaled to universal, using things like showing the clip from Superhero where Krillin is just barely lifting Cell Max's foot, how he was actually able to hurt Gohan, which is a fair point, and how he was fighting people who are knocking around Android 18 in the Tournament of Power. All of which are actually fair points. Now, I don't think Krillin scales fully to any of these characters. Not even close. He barely moves Cell Max, and Gohan was at base form, so he had none of his multipliers. Even so though, nice research on Sherm's end. Croatian on the other end, he tried his best. He brought up all sorts of scaling, even though we can really just scale him to Kirby since he takes on the same foes side by side with the pink puffball on multiple occasions. It didn't really seem like he did much research on his end, since he needed help from the audience of the cast to help with a lot of his main points. He brings up the Bandana D has a spear, but needs to be told that he also has a parasol, healing items, magic scepters, and the friendship heart that forces force the enemy to see you as their friend. The later of which Sherm had an argument for, but I don't really buy it. Android 18 was able to resist Ribrianne trying to force 18 to fall in love with her, but I have a problem with this because this doesn't have anything to do with scaling. It's just giving him an ability that he has never shown outright. I also think Krillin couldn't resist this because, like they said in the cast, people can resist abilities by overpowering them, like Goku using his ki to get past Hit's time stop. Ribrianne's ability is made of ki, and if it's made of ki, it can be overpowered. The friendship hearts don't fit that same mold even if you did give Krillin that ability. Now, Bandana D does have infinite pockets, and that helps him when thinking about his healing items. But Sherm brings up the Senzu beans, which is a really good point, and then he brings up the Dragon Ball video games. Look, none of that should even be considered in this debate. They are clearly non-canon and only exist in alternate scenarios. And that stuff doesn't interest me with a character that already has so much canon media. Maybe this works with characters that barely have any content to talk about, but not for Krillin. They bring up that Bandana D's spear can absorb energy, which is good for Krillin's basic ki attacks, but I think things like the Destructo Disc should be able to break through it. Even though if the stick breaks, Bandana D can just pull out an infinite supply of them and even throw them like he's firing bullets. I think it's funny that a cast pretty much solely based on scaling ended with them equalizing their stats, which leads me to wonder who wins based on ability. Based on everything they talked about, if you equalize their stats, Krillin would win this, I think. He's just a more skilled overall fighter. But I don't really agree with Sherm's scaling. I think Bandana D should scale higher because his feats are defeating universal threats against someone who could potentially just harm universal threats. Plus, Bandana D can absorb pretty much all of Krillin's ki attacks, so his martial arts are all he has. Granted, he is a better fighter, but if they were in a real death battle episode, I think Krillin would just get outscaled and lose outright. And 1. Nemesis versus Magician. The connections are that these series have a lesser rivalry, both coming from zombie games released almost at the same exact time. Both are bioengineering experiments that end up being the primary big bad at the end of their games. Both want nothing more than to kill the special agents opposing them no matter what. Both can evolve rapidly and survive things that were literally designed to kill them, and both were defeated by a very powerful woman. Not too much in terms of connections, but there's enough here to see why this matchup is wanted in the first place. This one is so good because compared to all the other entries for Fan Battle Cast, this one is the easiest to understand. Nemesis is rep by the CEO of Dino AIDS. Alright then, and Magician is rep by Yules. They both did a very good job convincing me that this matchup is amazing. For example, one of the big elephants in the room is Magician's speed and mobility, seeing as Magician can fly and create after images. So the question is posed as to how Nemesis will even catch Magician. Magician could stay back and throw fireballs, photon blasts, sky lasers, summon creatures like the dead, spiders, giants, and four-armed creatures using the DDR virus and Pandora's box, and potentially summon clones of himself, although that one is contested in the cast. Pandora's box is very broken. On top of resurrecting the dead, he can also mutate his body and adapt to his own death like Doomsday does. Sure, Nemesis does have a really good healing factor, and he becomes stronger the more damage he takes, but if he's completely destroyed, he dies. The CEO brings up Nemesis' HUD, which shows that he can identify weapons and threats, meaning that there is a possibility he could take the box away from Magician. But how would he do that? Well, he brings up many ways, like using either one of his 2 rocket launchers or his Gatling gun, but I don't think those would work very well since Yolks brings up Magician has barriers. There are 2 ways that CEO brings up that can lead to Nemesis' win, and that is the fact that the tentacles Nemesis has could keep up with Magician, and that Nemesis can control the creatures that Magician summons with the T-Virus. And if he gets Pandora's box away from Magician, the Magician himself can get infected as well. Not to mention, if Nemesis even punches the Magician, it'd be game over since Nemesis can fight so hard that he can create a tornado. This is a pretty simple matchup, but who wins? I think Magician wins. I highly doubt that Nemesis can steal away the Pandora's box since Magician is so much faster. Plus, it's more likely that Magician's photon beams could completely disintegrate Nemesis. But honestly, I think this could go either way depending on what feats you buy. It's just so much fun. I covered a lot of information in this video, but I do want to mention one thing in particular, and that's the way they handled the Kick of the Week segment and the aftermath of when I made my video on the subject. Now, initially, as we all know, they barely covered Makuta versus Palpatine at all originally, but they did bring it back and talk about that matchup as well as Fatalis versus Gamera in the same podcast. I do not like how they handle these in the slightest. I get that they want to try something new, but these people pitched a matchup, not a series. To kind of make my point a little clear, I want to bring up the quote that Ben says in one of the pitch sessions that someone recorded for their channel.
I do want to stop you real quick. We're just recapping Monica Magic at this point, but we're here to talk about a matchup, right? Like,
yes,
I want to hear about the matchup.
Yes.
And I want to hear about the matchup. I don't want to hear about the story. Let's talk about the matchup.
Okay, well,
Sure, the casts are longer than those 15 minutes, but the idea still stands. If you have a limited time to convince someone why a matchup is good, why would you waste time and go over things unrelated to that matchup? If you want to do these deep dives independently, then fine. But to use someone's Kickstarter matchup as a look at these cool series podcast instead of look at this awesome matchup podcast is really annoying to me. Especially because other people's pitches are getting proper debates. Maybe that's just me, but I think all of these matchups need to get treated with the same respect. I really do urge people to go to Fan Battle though. I don't know if I'll continue to cover their matchups moving forward. I'll have a community post asking if I should do it next month as well. If you guys want me to, I'll do it. But they do what Death Battle is trying to do, but better because they aren't on a time limit. They cover lore and debate very well, even though they need to work on their presentation and audio quality. Santi Sherm, please turn your audio up. And they need to simplify how they cover scaling so they don't spend 30 to 45 minutes ramping up the character's highest feats. They are brand new, so it's not surprising that they aren't the best at it. But being brand new, they do a lot better than I could. So good work, guys. I give January of Death Battle Cast a grade of a D. Definitely the weakest of their 3 months I've covered. But I'll be back next month with hopefully more positive things to say. Next week, I'm going to try to get up my prediction for Ghost Rider vs. Spawn. There's a lot I've been learning, and there's probably a lot more I'll need to learn by the time that prediction releases. Until then, have a wonderful day, everyone, and take care.